Pan-Africanism. What if I told you that one idea, just one, helped dismantle empires, inspired independence movement across an entire continent, shaped the American civil rights struggle, and still influences African politics today? An idea born not in a palace, but in plantations, not in parliaments, but in exile, not in Africa alone, but across oceans. That idea was Pan-Africanism. It was more than a political theory. It was a rebellion of the mind, a declaration of identity, a global awakening, and at its height, it shook the world. But what exactly was Pan-Africanism? Where did it begin? Why did it rise so powerfully in the 20th century? And why does its dream of unity still remain unfinished? Today, we're diving deep into the movement that tried to unite a continent and redefine Black identity worldwide. Pan-Africanism did not begin in Accra, Lagos, or Addis Ababa. It began in the diaspora. When millions of Africans were enslaved and transported across the Atlantic, they lost homeland, but not consciousness. Over generations, a new awareness emerged among descendants of enslaved Africans in the Caribbean, the United States, and Latin America. By the late 19th century, Black intellectuals began asking profound questions. Why are people of African descent oppressed everywhere? Why is Africa portrayed as primitive? And what would happen if Black people globally saw themselves as one community? One of the earliest thinkers to articulate this was Edward Wilmot Blyden. He argued that Africa had its own civilizational identity, distinct and valuable, not something to be measured against Europe. Then came W.E.B. Du Bois, who famously declared, "The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line." Du Bois believed colonialism in Africa and racism in America were not separate issues, they were part of the same global system of domination. And if oppression was global, then resistance must be global too. Pan-Africanism was born. In 1900, the first Pan-African conference was held in London. It was symbolic, but revolutionary. For the first time, representatives of African descent gathered to demand rights, dignity, and an end to colonial exploitation. Between 1919 and 1945, several Pan-African congresses followed. The most important? Manchester, 1945. This was not just intellectual debate. It was a blueprint for liberation. Among those present were future African leaders. Kwame Nkrumah, a Jomo Kenyatta. They returned home radicalized, not in violence, but in vision. They believed Africa must not only be independent, but united. Pan-Africanism was no longer just philosophy. It became strategy. While intellectuals debated in conference halls, one man mobilized the masses. Marcus Garvey. Garvey founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, which grew into one of the largest mass movements of Black people in history. His message was unapologetic. Black pride, Black economic independence, Africa for Africans, at home and abroad. Garvey understood something critical. Before political freedom, there must be mental freedom. Colonialism had not only conquered land, it had conquered psychology. Garvey's movement restored dignity, restored pride, restored connection to Africa. Though his Black Star Line shipping venture failed, his ideological impact did not. He planted seeds of global Black consciousness that would later fuel independence movements. When Ghana gained independence in 1957 under Kwame Nkrumah, it was more than a national event. It was continental. Nkrumah declared, "The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked with the total liberation of Africa." He envisioned the United States of Africa. One army, one currency, one foreign policy. In 1963, 32 African leaders gathered in Addis Ababa to form the Organization of African Unity. Figures like Haile Selassie, a Julius Nyerere, a Gamal Abdel Nasser, stood together under one banner. For the first time in modern history, Africa had a continental institution representing its collective voice. But unity was complicated. Some leaders wanted immediate political federation. Others preferred gradual economic cooperation. The dream was powerful, but fragile. Pan-Africanism threatened global power structures. A united Africa would control enormous mineral wealth, strategic trade routes, a massive population. During the Cold War, Africa became a chessboard between the United States and the Soviet Union. Coups increased. Assassinations occurred. Political instability spread. In 1966, Nkrumah was overthrown while abroad. Was it purely domestic dissatisfaction or external interference? Historians still debate. What's clear is this: the strongest advocate for continental political unity was removed from power, and slowly national interest began to outweigh continental ambition. Pan-Africanism shifted from political federation to symbolic solidarity. In 2002, the African Union replaced the OAU. Its goals expanded: our economic integration, conflict resolution, our infrastructure development, continental trade through AFCFTA. The vision of unity remained, but in a more pragmatic form. Today, Pan-Africanism lives through trade agreements, cultural movements, student exchanges, and diaspora reconnection. It is less about one government and more about shared destiny. So did Pan-Africanism succeed? Yes and no. It helped dismantle colonialism. It inspired independence. It reshaped Black identity globally. But it did not achieve full political unity. Yet perhaps its greatest achievement was psychological. It changed how Africans saw themselves. From fragmented tribes to a connected civilization. From colonial subjects to historical agents. And maybe the real question isn't whether Pan-Africanism succeeded in the past. Maybe the question is, will the 21st century finally complete what the 20th began? Because in a world dominated by continental powers, the European Union, China, the United States, can Africa afford to remain divided? Or is unity no longer idealism, but necessity? If this deep dive expanded your understanding of African political history, subscribe for more. And tell me in the comments, should Africa pursue political federation or focus on economic unity first? This is Chronicles Africa, and history is still unfolding.